Voices amongst the static. A glitch in the simulation. A broadcast with no origin. You have found the Phenomenauts Podcast. Hello, you sentient cluster of space dust. You've tuned into The Phenomenauts, a bi-monthly podcast where we look at the weird, wonderful and mysterious happenstances of this and occasionally other universes. Your hosts on this wild ride are myself, D, the amazing Amber.
Hello.
And the effervescent Oscar.
Hoi hoi.
Don't forget, we're on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, Transistor, so please do give us a like, follow, share, comment, download, whatever's easiest. We just love it when you guys interact with us. Alright, admin and shameless self-plug out the way. How's everybody doing?
I'd like to say okay, but I got a banging headache. And not banging as in, like, good. Like, you know, this song is a banger. I've got a banger in my head. It's stuck in my head, and it's not a catchy song.
Oh dear.
You, Oscar?
Oh, I'm hunky-dory, as they say somewhere. I don't know where that is, but they say it.
Right. I'm just going to vamp hopelessly because I've just remembered I don't have the wheel right now. So give me 2 seconds and we can just pretend that this never happened.
Well, while you're doing that, D, why don't you tell us how you are? How are you, D?
I am but a smear on the great tapestry of life.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
I'm spinning the wheel.
Okay.
Oscar, talk about something cool or weird.
Okay.
He aims to please.
Yarr. Many episodes ago, on a night just like this one, ye two raised from the sea some spectral ships to seek their sunken secrets. What ye might not have expected was that 50 episodes on, more ships would emerge from the briny deep to tell their untold tales. So yeah, I've got some more ghost ship stories.
I love this. This is great.
That intro was. I want to give you. I'd give you an applause, but it'll sound awful through the mic, so you can just
You can applaud at home gently.
Okay, so I've brought 2 ghost ship stories to share with a lot of you.
Oh, fantastic.
First, I'd like to discuss is the Octavius. So, in 1761, the Octavius was a merchant ship, and it had supposedly left England for somewhere in the Far East. It wasn't quite specified, but I believe it was somewhere around Asia. They were sort of looking to do some trading.
Okay.
They successfully reached their destination. Phew. And they only did it in 1 year, so it only took them 1 year to get all the way from England to Asia in their boat. Having arrived and succeeded in their business, they decided to set sail back to England, but they never returned home.
Oh!
In 1775, so that's 14 years after it had left England, the ship was found again west of Greenland by the Herald, a whaler ship. The boarding party found that the entire crew of 28 were dead, frozen, and well preserved on the ship.
Ooh.
So they're all there, but sadly all dead. In the captain's quarters was said to be the remains of a woman, a boy covered in a blanket, a sailor with a tinderbox, and the captain sat at their writing desk with writing instrument in hand and the log open in front of him.
What?
Did they have like a day after tomorrow scenario or something?
Just snap cold, just bam, you're all frozen solid.
The boarding party who went aboard were unwilling to search the ship and decided they would take only the captain's log, which was heavily damaged by all the ice, and they the last noted entry in it was made on the 11th of November 1762, which means they'd been lost in the Arctic for about 13 years. Whether they were alive for that whole time might not have been the case. It's more because that was about a year after their departure from Asia, I believe.
Right.
Like just relatively not too long after they left Asia to head back to England. This is the last log entry, and they weren't heard again until they were rediscovered.
Oh, so let's assume they were alive for a year, because it did take a year to get there in the first place. But then for a following 12 years, they were just floating around, all dead and desiccated.
Yeah. So one of the biggest theories that the most believed is that the captain had decided to gamble and take the Northwest Passage back. So it's sort of like a sea shortcut. So if you want to go from England all the way to Asia, you've got to go south around Europe. Then you've got to sort of circumnavigate. I think you can just get around Africa. But the problem is it just takes a really long time because you have to get around a load of countries. So that takes quite a while. Whereas the Northwest Passage is like a sneaky route you can take where you go over the north of Canada and the Americas and cut across that way. And it's a lot quicker for us. However, it was very well known for its treacherous conditions.
That sounds straight up like a bad idea.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. But in theory, this is what the captain had done. One of the things you'd have to deal with in the Northwest Passage is called the Arctic Ice Pack. So the sort of ice freezes further out and then recedes during the warmer times of the year. And then when it gets colder again, it spreads back out. But the ice can get up to about 4 meters thick out there.
Ooh.
So most likely, but no evidence to confirm or deny this, is that the ship got struck by such a freeze, and they were trapped there and they all died. And then when the ice finally receded during the next sort of warmer time, it actually finished the entirety of the journey through the Northwest Passage. Just everyone was dead.
Oh, man.
But that's just one theory. Again, we don't have any evidence to support this. All we know is that they were found dead many years later near Greenland, which is on the other side of the Northwest Passage.
So I guess they succeeded in a roundabout way.
So
that's so crazy. So there's like an ice sheet that will move forward and backwards just with the natural fluctuations in temperature. Not necessarily summer and winter, but like a warmer decade and then a colder decade kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they might have just gone, oh crap, we're boxed in by this ice sheet. Oh, it's frozen the sea. We'll just wait till it thaws, and then they all died, and then 12 more years went by, and then it thawed. That's crazy.
In later years, they developed icebreaker ships that were designed to sort of be able to get through colder waters because they would just sort of cut the ice in front of them.
They were designed to make a good first impression and strike up conversation.
They didn't have that kind of technology though. Sadly, they were very awkward to talk to at first.
I know. Same.
But they sadly, kind of an upside and a downside here. Nowadays, it's not that much of an issue to go through the Northwest Passage.
Yeah, because there's no more ice there, is there?
Yeah, because there's not as much ice, so it's not as a perilous journey anymore. So, yeah. So nowadays, it's an okay risk to take. Back then, maybe not the smartest. But how about another ghost ship?
Okay.
So the sailing vessel Seabird was another merchant brig, but this one was under the command of Captain John Huxham in the 1700s.
Oh, Captain Hook.
I was just gonna say.
In 1750, the ship on its way back from Honduras was seen close to Newport Harbour, which is in America. I can't remember which state. I had it written down somewhere and I've lost it.
It confuses me because there's a new port in Wales. I thought you were going to say in the American state of Wales.
No, it's Newport Harbour in Rhode Island State,
Okay.
America.
Okay.
So it was on its way back to the harbour, and many onlookers did see the ship as it was coming into the harbour, but nobody actually saw any of the crew on board. The ship managed to sail itself through the breakers and beach itself gently upon Eastern Beach in Newport Harbour. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that the ship had been abandoned. There was coffee boiling on the galley stove and an elaborate breakfast. This is in quotes because that's what I was reading. They said elaborate breakfast. And I wasn't quite sure what that could mean, but...
Yeah, what constitutes an elaborate breakfast? I've made the eggs into like a sort of leaning, wobbling stack.
So, yeah, they had the coffee on the stove, they had the breakfast on the table, but where was everyone? So there were no signs of violence, robbery, or sickness. A lot of the valuable cargo and instruments were still in the right places. Seemingly everyone just vanished, and one of the lifeboats was missing as well. But what could cause them all to leave in the middle of breakfast, just as they're about to get into port and succeed with their sail? Yeah, if only we could ask some of the two shipmates. There were two shipmates found on board, by the way. But sadly, they couldn't tell anybody anything because neither of them spoke any English or any other human language for that matter, as it was the ship's cat and dog.
Aww.
They were both recorded to be in good health.
Aww.
Just to relax you there.
Well, I'm saying but at this stage they very well could have just thrown everyone in the lifeboat at Claw Point.
So it was the cat and the dog. It was an inside job.
Yeah.
But the ship was later renamed and sold. It was renamed to the Beach Bird, hence, because it was beached, I imagine. And it went on to make some more voyages, but nothing as intriguing as this one.
That is odd. So they must have bailed out all very quickly, just going, we have to all get off the ship right now. And it was close enough to when they were about to arrive that they still had breakfast set up, and there was just coffee on the boil.
Yeah, and the fact that nothing else was taken, the ship reached its destination. Essentially, it reached the sort of harbour it was heading to. Maybe not the right place to park the boat, but it's a mystery I don't think we'll ever be able to solve.
Do you have any theories?
So I've read a couple of ghost ship stories sort of to prepare myself for this episode. I even re-listened to episode 6 of the Phenomenauts, which also covers ghost ships.
Oh.
But all of those it would be things like the whole crew was all sort of mass hallucinations because of various chemicals or conditions. Some of them may be escaping the boat due to horrendous conditions, and then the boat just managing to get out of there on its own. But this one confuses me because they were so close to the destination. The food's all there. The animals are both fine, which means they've been fed recently. So I'm just gonna go with aliens.
Yeah. Just good old abduction.
X-Files music.
I think it's the answer to most of the questions in life I can't quite find an answer to.
Why can't I make rent? Abduction. It might have been a different ship than this one, but it sounds very similar in what happened. But there was a ship that they just found that there was just no one there. Lifeboat missing.
Was it the Marie Celeste?
That was the Mary Celeste.
Maybe that was the one. You know where they were like, we looked down in the in the cargo, and they had like alcohol or something.
Yeah,
it could have been...
this was the Marie Celeste. I remember us talking about it.
Yeah, and it was just they all got in the lifeboat, and they probably all went, like lowered themselves. Well, got themselves further away from the main ship with a rope, and then just at some point there was a big gust of wind, and it tugged a bit harder than they were expecting, and they lost the rope, and they just had to watch as the ship sailed away from them. Which is, I'm not that afraid of water, but that is an horrifying idea. You're like, here we go, don't worry, we'll be back on board in a little bit. Oh, I've dropped the rope. And you're in the middle of the ocean, you got like 20 people in a lifeboat. Ugh.
Yeah, especially if you couldn't swim, from back then.
Oh.
Like if you just couldn't swim, so you were just in this little lifeboat.
Ew.
Oof. Yeah, but there you go. Some delightful ghost ship stories. There were a few more I was reading on, but I thought, you know what? I'll save them for 50 episodes down the line.
Well, I enjoyed that, and I'll enjoy it when it comes up again.
Yeah, ghost ships, always an interesting one.
I'ma spin the wheel.
Spin the wheel.
Hey, Amber.
Yeah?
Speak.
Okay. Let me just get us ready for this as well. So, all right, kids. Get your legs crossed and get your fingers on your lips. I'm about to school you. Hey, Phenomenauts, Amber here. The sky is blue. Or is it? That's my best Vsauce impression. The light from the sun, right? That's like pure light. There's infrared, there's ultraviolet, and every colour of the visible light spectrum all mixed up. The visible light from the sun is white. So why does the sun look yellow? And why is colourless air blue in large quantities? So it's all about how light travels through things like air. Or more specifically, the cocktail of gases you humans call air here on Earth. So you might be savvy to this already, but the main gas in air is nitrogen. It's about 78% nitrogen. It's about 21% oxygen, 1% argon, and 0.04% carbon dioxide. Nobody talks about him. He's well problematic unless you're a plant. There's also some water vapour in air as well, but that just changes depending on where you are. So it's usually about 1% at sea level. In a desert, obviously it's less, and in Manchester it's exactly a bit too much. So air scatters blue wavelengths of the white light that's coming in from the sun. So white minus blue wavelengths makes it look more yellow. So the sun looks yellow because all the blue light is being bounced around in the air, which is also the reason why the air looks blue, because the blue light is being bounced off it. Okay, so you can breathe a deep and informed breath in now, now that you've identified the component gases of air. So why do I mention all this anyway? Don't worry, I too would like to know, but I can't remember.
Can I breathe out yet?
Oh, yes. It was Carl Sagan. Yes, Carl Sagan. Yeah, he released a paper about 3 weeks before I was born in October 1993. Ah, yes, I remember it well. Good old Carl Sagan. So this paper that he worked on was great. They were allowed to use the Galileo spacecraft to do some clever science. While Galileo was on its way to Jupiter for its main mission, Sagan et al. Used the onboard equipment to do some seemingly redundant tests. So the main finding of the paper was actually groundbreaking. They confirmed life on a planet in space. Wait, not groundbreaking at all, because the planet in question was Earth.
Oh.
Carl, what are you doing, man? I could have told you that. What are you playing at, you muppet? Okay, hang on. Stop berating Carl Sagan, everybody. Come on, guys. I know it was just me doing that, but come on, guys, stop doing that. Because he actually proved something very important when it comes to the research of life out there in the universe. So they basically confirmed the presence of life on the planet Earth using only the equipment on board the Galileo spacecraft, completely independently from any prior knowledge about Earth. So the data alone, just taken like sort of in a vacuum as it were, confirmed biological activity on the third planet of the solar system. And this was if you were an outsider and had no other contextual information about Earth, this data would prove that there was life on it. So the one test that they did that I am interested in though, is the near-infrared spectroscopy they did on Earth's atmosphere. So basically, they look at the wavelengths of light that are missing from light that's coming through the atmosphere of Earth, or at least lower levels than they were expecting. So if you get light bouncing off the Earth, if you get light coming through, like, if Earth goes in front of the sun and the light shines through the atmosphere, you can have a look at what wavelengths are being absorbed. So effectively, the wavelengths that get absorbed are specific to specific molecules like O2, oxygen, or CO2. So it was the O2 level that Sagan used as a big indicator of life, because O2 reacts with stuff. O2 and iron makes rust, for example. So you don't see O2 levels like you see on Earth without something keeping it at that kind of level, like, I don't know, photosynthesizing plants and microbes. So, every atmospheric gas has a specific sort of spectral identity, and certain gases are only produced en masse by biological activity. So, every gas has a specific wavelength. Some gases are indicators of life. Got it? Get it? Got it? Good. That's what my mum used to say. I appreciate your patience as well. You too. I promise I am getting to the point. So...
Just listening very intently, don't worry, take as long as you need.
So let's turn back the clock, why don't we? So, not so far as 1993, but August 2019. Researchers then found that there were some odd results coming from the clouds of Venus. There were small particles in the atmosphere that were absorbing most of the ultraviolet light and some visible light. They dubbed these unknown absorbers. They were thought by some to be ferric chloride, some form of sulfur, disulfur dioxide, and other such chemistry stuff, but none of these ideas properly explained the formations of these unknown absorbers, or the way that they absorbed the light, and the way that they would change and sort of work in sync with the climate of Venus. In fact, their size and their light-absorbing properties are very similar to the microorganisms that we find floating around in Earth's atmosphere. Even good old Carl Sagan speculated that these clouds, they'd sort of known about them for a long time, but they were poorly understood. He speculated that those clouds could be microorganisms. I think I better take a quick breather. So go on, drink up that delicious air. But what are your thoughts so far before I continue?
So there's potential life on another planet, except it's in the clouds.
Yes. So that was back in 2019. Now, you may have heard people talking about Venus and the search for life very recently, and that's because, and I will get to it, there's been more developments on this since.
Ooh.
But yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Kind of just sat here like, that bit in Starship Troopers where it's like, would you like to know more? And I'm like, yes, please, just mashing the button.
Okay then. Well, I'll get to the more exciting newer stuff then. So let's bring it even more current then. January 2020. A study shows that besides O2, besides oxygen, there's another great molecule that can be an indicator of life. Phosphine gas. So it's pH 3. It's just a molecule. Quite the opposite of O2. Phosphine is only found in anoxic environments. So that's environments with no oxygen here on Earth. So if you find a completely sealed environment, like underground, in a cave, underwater, stuff like that, you will find phosphine is created through biological processes. It's pretty useful though, phosphine, because there's plenty of there's for a lot of anaerobic microbes, oxygen is toxic to them. So when we're looking at stuff like, say, Venus, where there isn't much, if any, oxygen in the atmosphere, it would be toxic if there was anything there. So phosphine then becomes quite a useful indicator. So instead of us looking for a planet that's like Earth, we look for planets that have comfortable conditions, but just different, you know what I mean? So yeah, phosphine, like oxygen, is quite reactive though. So it doesn't hang around unless it's being actively produced continuously. So that's pretty cool. Another biosignature gas. Whoop-de-doo. Whoop-de-doo indeed, friends, because just last month they found phosphine gas on Venus. So what does that mean particularly? Well, phosphine gas can be produced inorganically by some chemical reaction or another. Sorry, chemists. Sorry, Oscar. But not in the amounts that we have detected, and the way that it fluctuates up and down, and the levels that we're seeing, we don't know of any inorganic process that can do that. Now, skeptics are busy studying other possible ways phosphine can be created in large volumes, such as there's stuff like photochemistry, like there's very complicated, clouds and lots of radiation coming from the sun and lots of heat and pressure and everything on Venus. There could be something going on in the clouds that creates this phosphine gas in a way that we are not aware of yet. But if that search for an alternate, sort of non-life answer, if that search is in vain, well, then it would mean that there was life on Venus. It would mean that we're not alone in the universe. It would mean that not only is there life out there, but it's in our cosmic backyard. Like, what are the odds? What are the odds of life being in completely different conditions and just one planet over from us? Like, is life more common than we thought? If that's the case, life could be thriving on 1 million planets just in our own galaxy, right? That, like, it's, if we find that something has come to fruition just next door, I'm like, well, where else might it be as well? Could it be on Mars? Could it be under the, oceans of Enceladus and stuff like that? I mean, unfortunately, though, I just hit that Fermi paradox sort of like barricade, though, because it can't be that common, though, right? Because if it's that common, why can't we see any aliens? Why haven't we met any? Why don't we see evidence of them using their, FTL drives and all that sort of stuff? Like, why don't we hear radio signals from space? Like, we've had no convincing astronomical evidence for extraterrestrial life for the hundreds of years that we've been doing, stargazing. And then it's just all of a sudden next door. Like, either most life is just little itty-bitty microbes, or they blow themselves to ribbons before ever making a big mark on the universe. And I mean, that's the idea of the great filter. Is it becoming a multicellular organism? Not just being, I'm a microbe, I just do everything, I'm just a single cell. Because like humans, you've got like, bone cells, you've got like blood cells, you've got skin cells, muscle cells, neural cells, you've got all these different kinds. And if you took one of these and just like, threw it down in a petri dish, it would just look like a microbe, because each type of cell is like its own very specialized thing. It's almost like, if a bacteria goes, well, I'm going to have these little wriggly bits on my outside so that I can move along the top of, a surface. You can have stuff like, in the brain, it's better to be able to conduct electricity because there's a lot of electricity flying around. So I just make myself, like, I've evolved to be a certain way. So it's almost like you are a bunch of different environments, and you've got each one of those environments absolutely packed full of different kinds of microbes. But the colony that they make up together is you, and you are a whole thing. And it's so bizarre that, like, I can feel down to my bony fingertips and my fleshy, squishy fingers, and I look at it with my eye that has a glass, like lens over the top of it and stuff, and just all this, like, maybe that is just very, very not likely to happen. Like, life, yeah, that's quite common. Microbes, they're all over the place. They're over on Venus, aren't they? But when it comes to all this multicellular life, maybe that's just not common. Or maybe they always get to about our stage, but they accidentally get too much technology and they don't get enlightened enough, and they just blow themselves to pieces with, nuclear weapons. In which case, the Great Filter is ahead of us, and we've got to get our shit together, as it were. An even more fringe theory would be life here and on Venus come from the same source. Like, if we, say, scoop up some of these microbes from Venus, if they're there, and test the DNA, and we find that it's got the same, basis as what we have here on Earth, and there are certain genes which are in common with things on Earth, then we could say they're from the same source. Okay, so how did it get there? Consider, like, the big asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. Big asteroid slaps into Earth and just throws microbe-ridden rocks off the planet and just into space. And they fly through space, and the microbes just hunker down inside, protected from the outside. And then they land on Venus. And then back when the atmosphere was actually quite nice and habitable on Venus, the rocks land and the microbes come out, and we've seeded Venus with, Earth life. That's the idea of panspermia. Yeah, crazy. I love the idea of panspermia. But I mean, what really sort of, I thought about this last night and I went, this is the oddest thing as well. In terms of timescales, Venus entered its habitable period about the same time that Earth did. And it's actually thought to have had surface water and habitable conditions for about 3 billion years before its, like, nice atmosphere mysteriously devolved into a massive cloud of sulfuric acid about 700 million years ago. So it's just as likely that life begun there, and we're the planet that was seeded with life. And there are some scientists saying this could be the case, because, the Cambrian explosion, you ever heard of that event?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a point where life was very basic, rudimentary, just like microbes. They just came in big blocks of just loads of microbes just living together. They didn't really do anything. All of a sudden, this insane, like, diversification of life. All these new gene sequences evolved, and all these new traits and adaptations and stuff. And there was just this radiation of just, like, all these crazy different organisms for every different niche of the environment. And then almost just as quickly, a lot of them died out, but what they had brought to the table was already kind of, like, in place then. And it just sort of, it was like a stepping stone. It was a very big step up in terms of the complexity of life. And the scientists saying, well, that could have just been, asteroids landed from Venus, and they contained more advanced, like DNA sequences that were taken up by the organisms of the time, and that's what drove them to evolve. It's like, it would be absolutely insane if that was true. It could always be that both planets were seeded by ancient aliens. You're allowed to believe that. I mean, I don't. But it's a nice idea.
Well, if we go off the theory, just working on top, I'm not saying it's real, but if we go off the theory that Earth was seeded from Venus or vice versa, the likelihood of something hitting one planet and then the other planet being in the perfect position, not being, on the other side of the sun or anything.
Yeah.
That is pretty amazing statistically.
Yeah, although, so it seems like that is a very low chance of that happening. But if you feel that didn't happen, and we are finding there's a common ancestor, then the alternative is that it was intentionally put from there to here, or vice versa, or on both planets. But then that implies a lot more than just, it's like, do you want, what's Occam's razor going to say in that scenario? Is it more likely that a really freakishly low percentage chance thing happened, or a quite, quite a normal thing happened, but it implies that there are higher aliens out there. Like, which one is more likely then in that scenario?
Well, did you say that life started on both planets roughly around the same time?
Well, obviously, we do have to take it with a grain of salt. We don't know much about what's going on Venus, so possibly there wasn't life at the same time, but it had habitable conditions. It had surface water. It had a normal sort of density atmosphere. It had a nice temperature at ground level. And yeah, for about 3 billion years, it was habitable.
Because if you ignore the fact that it's very unlikely for, one thing flying in space to hit something else, let alone our neighbour, the distance it would have to travel as well, because it's not going to be travelling at the speed of light. There's so many factors here that make me go, what? It's so unlikely to happen, but yeah, it could happen.
It's crazy because no matter how you cut this discovery, there's some kind of advancement to be made. So it's either panspermia gets confirmed, ancient aliens get confirmed, life is more common than we thought, the great filter is behind us or in front of us, or there is some new way of producing phosphine that we don't know of, which is going to help us in our search for life in the future. So, no matter what happens, we gain something from this discovery.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because we're supposed to have the James Webb Space Telescope launching in the next couple of years. It's going to be doing things like this, looking through the atmospheres of planets that transit their stars. And if it can see stuff, if we look and it literally, there's life in Venus. We found it. We cultured them and all that sort of stuff. If we can confirm that this is, not a false positive and that there is actually life there, we can use the James Webb Space Telescope to look for phosphine. And if we see it, we know there's life out there too. So, this could all be happening in the next couple of years. Absolutely, I don't... I keep bringing this up with people, and it was in the news and stuff. Why are people not, just losing their minds? We just found out that we're not alone in the universe.
Well, I, for one, welcome our cosmic cousins.
Cosmic cousins. I mean, there you have it, though. We might not be alone.
Love it.
That's it. That's the end of my section.
Oh, I like that a lot. That's very interesting.
I was geeking out a little bit. I apologise.
How dare you? How dare you apologise for being enthusiastic about a topic you love?
All right, you've resurrected my vibe. Yeah, aliens!
Good. That's what we like to hear. Never, under any circumstance, get demotivated or upset about talking about something you're passionate about. I swear to Christ, this goes for Amber, this goes for Oscar, this goes for every fucker listening. All y'all, talk about the things you like and don't be ashamed of it.
Yeah. I remember a line from Mass Effect 2 where Kelly just goes, passion's nice wherever you can find it. And I was like, that's right.
Yeah.
Look, if something makes you get out of bed in the morning, don't let anyone ruin that for you.
Hell yeah.
Providing you ain't hurting the body, it's all groovy.
You do you.
Let's take a moment to hear a word from our sponsors.
How many garden gnomes could you take in a fight?
When humans go extinct, what do you think will be the dominant species?
What's your deepest, darkest fear? Like the sound of any of that? Well, check out the Trialogue Podcast, a bi-monthly comedy, existentialism talk show talking about anything and everything.
We're occasionally funny too.
Find us on Spotify, iTunes and Transistor. See you there, folks. So, back to the Seven Wonders Saga this week, our penultimate episode covering another big dude. This time, the enigmatic Colossus of Rhodes, which I'll be honest, is essentially, just, a big metal dude who stood over the port of Rhodes a while back. By a while back, I mean several hundreds, maybe, likely 1,000 years, but a while ago.
Just the other day, yeah.
Yeah, so, before I get into it, trivia time!
Oh!
That's right, me. The Colossus was the last of the Seven Wonders to be completed, and the first to be destroyed, which I should mention, does mean all the Seven Wonders existed at the same time for around 60 years.
Oh, nice.
So that's quite cool.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Made me happy at the very least.
Yeah. Oh, that really sucks for Colossus here. He's like last one in, first one out.
Yeah, and the pyramids was first one in, last one out. It's still here, so...
Wow.
Well, what is it? To start, the Colossus of Rhodes. It was made in the image of Helios, the Greek god of the sun, the personification of the star itself. So, pretty big concept. According to contemporary descriptions, it was roughly 33 meters, or if you like, 108 foot high. Or if I'm going to be really scientific about it, it's roughly 18.8 Oscars.
Oh,
wow!
Thank goodness, I was getting confused for a second.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it should really just be that measurement nowadays.
Hey, Colossus of Rhodes, how many Oscars could you take in a fight?
To give you a better scale, it's roughly the same height as the Statue of Liberty from toe to crown.
Oh, no way.
Torch exempt. So to give, even if you've not been to the Statue of Liberty, you can get an idea of how big it is.
Yeah.
About 18.8 Oscars.
And then such a long time ago as well. So, like, Statue of Liberty is now.
Also, sidebar, it was likely a fair amount taller than the Statue of Zeus. They started building it in 292 BC. And you'll have to bear with me with the next bit because there are a couple of differing counts. And I also don't know if it's fixed how long it took to be built because, again, differing accounts. So, without further ado, rich mental picture time. As always, bear in mind this thing does not exist anymore, so I'm just going to go off a mixture of accounts and modern renderings, and we really don't know exactly what it looked like, so please bear that in mind.
Okay.
And there's a fair few misconceptions. But anyway, without further ado, if you wouldn't mind closing your eyes if possible.
Oh, God. The danger begins.
I want you to imagine an ancient Greek harbour bustling with life and activity. Standing vigil over the spectacle is a Colossus, a giant brass figure facing outwards, an arm outstretched towards Olympus, the home of the gods, and around its neck a long cloak that fell down to the backs of its knees, the left hand bearing a rod, and the face framed by 9 elongated points to represent the sun's rays. Allow me to finish with what is considered to be dedication text to the Colossus. To you, O sun, the people of Dorian Rhodes set up this bronze statue reaching to Olympus, when they had pacified the waves of war and crowned their city with the spoils taken from the enemy. Not only over the seas, but also on land did they kindle the lovely torch of freedom and independence. For the descendants of Heracles belongs dominion over sea and land. You can open them eyes now.
So, it is giving me similar vibes to Statue of Liberty as well.
Yeah, I suppose. In a lot of ways, it's got a lot of, I guess, positive connotations, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a little while. It was actually likely built with iron bars, which would have worked as like a sort of skeleton. It was plated in brass, some quite thick and some quite thin. It was riveted onto the structure, which meant it kind of created like a very smooth sort of skin over this sort of iron skeleton.
This seems crazy. They added muscles in there made of a sort of clay, and they attached his bottom with a meringue mixture.
Well, it likely had stone feet and stood on a marble pedestal near the Mandrake Harbour, which was 15 metres high or 49 foot, or again, more scientifically, 8.6 Oscars when rounded to the nearest. Other sources claim that the Colossus stood on a breakwater in the harbour, which is a bit like a windbreak but for the ocean.
Right.
Again, there's a fair bit of controversy with, I say controversy, misinterpretations or things we don't know. But I'll get into them as we keep going. So you've heard what it is. Now, why is it? So, it was, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. Yes, I did. It was built in honour of the sun god.
Yeah.
And also to commemorate the Rhodians' defence of the island from a siege by the Macedonians in 305 BC. So they survived a siege and were like, yeah, woo! And built a big old statue.
Let's build a giant metal skeleton. Oh god, it looks a bit horrible. Do you want to put some skin on it?
So, before I move on, any thoughts, folks?
So, From what imagery I've seen, it looked like the mouth of the bay. You know, where the ships come sailing in. You got to sail between his legs. Is that right?
Right. I'm going to talk about it a bit more later, but effectively, no. You can actually go to where it was thought to have stood today.
Okay.
And where it is said to have stood, because I've been myself, because I have family who live over there, and there's like they're like pillars with, I think it's bronze deer on top of them, where its feet would have been.
Oh.
So it's like it's very easy to assume that it would have stood over the bay.
Okay.
But we don't think it did. Essentially,
I like the idea. They say knock him down, and they go, "Oh, we've just got a couple of ankles here. Why don't we just sort of retrofit them into some deer? Yeah, that'll be good."
Yeah, the fact that they chose the sun god to represent their victory in battle, I'm wondering why that. And obviously they built it bigger than Zeus's statue. He's not going to be too happy about that.
Oh.
Pretty sure I cover that actually a bit further on as to why it's Helios, but if I don't, give me a nudge and I'll let you know.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
I'm just working up a headcanon here about what happened.
Well, while you're writing up that canon, let me tell you how. So, they funded it after the siege, and there was a lot of equipment left behind, so they just sold the equipment. Like, they got sieged, the people who were sieging them left, so did the forces that were fighting them, so whatever was left, they just sold. And that just makes sense. And they were like, what do we do with this money? Well, let's make a statue of our patron deity. So that's why it's Helios, effectively. That was their patron on Rhodes.
He's our favourite.
So, from what I'm reading, we think it took around 12 years to build, the completion being in around 280 BC. A lot of the resources used were upcycled, so a lot of the iron and bronze were recycled from the weapons left behind. The scaffolding for the lower portions may have been improvised from an old siege tower. The upper segments were constructed using a large earthen ramp. I don't know if you remember me talking about those when I talked about the pyramids a while back.
Yeah. Like, I suppose that, it does beg the question, how did they, get his head up onto his shoulders? Like, you can't, they didn't really have cranes or anything, did they, at the time, so... Well,
this is what I mean, they would have built it up using structures around it to build the parts, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What happened to it? Where's it gone? What do? Short answer, earthquake.
It's always an earthquake.
Well, I mean, they didn't exactly have a good idea of how to make things earthquake-proof back then. I'm pretty sure they were still thinking it was just a sign that the gods were pissed.
I need to find out who the god of Earth is. Like, did they attribute earthquakes to a specific god? Because that one is killing it right now.
Well, in 226 BC, there was an earthquake. It actually did a large amount of damage to the city, destroying the harbour and the surrounding buildings. During this, the statue snapped at the knee and fell onto land, because, of course, it snapped at the knee. Ptolemy III, I don't know if you remember him, mentioned him a few times, actually offered to pay for the reconstruction. But the Pythia, who was the high priestess of the Temple of Apollo, also known as the Oracle of Delphi, this is going to happen, I interpret the will of the gods, sort of thing. Scared the Rhodians, suggesting they had offended Helios, so they declined.
What?
So if it wasn't for the Pythia, we might still have we might have had a new Colossus.
So we've angered the sun god, and he sent an earthquake. So we're not going to rebuild the statue to say sorry. We're just going to sort of blank him.
Yeah, could have had Colossus 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Well, I mean, the Pythia, they were, like, responsible for loads of stuff, like, the whole story in 300 was basically the go up and go.
Well, they were the messenger of the gods, effectively.
Yeah.
The Pythia spoke and people listened.
Well, the thing was, they weren't the messenger of the gods, they just some random... usually an adolescent girl or just a young woman just getting high on just some crazy stuff and then just saying whatever she felt like, really. Or, as in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, is just having a family threatened by the Illuminati and they say this. And they can basically just get anything to happen.
But yeah. So the remains, however, do still are still noted historically. They were described by our boy Strabo. Don't know if you remember him. Apparently they were so impressive, people still travelled just to see them. So despite this thing effectively, falling over, people were still coming to see it.
I suppose like half a Colossus sticking out the mud. Yeah, that's still quite impressive.
It fell onto land, so it was just laying there effectively. Because you can't just move something like that. It's too big and too heavy. What do you do?
Yeah. That's a mood.
Yeah, it is. So our other boy, Pliny, also remarked that few could wrap their arms around the fallen thumb, its fingers being larger than most statues.
Jeez.
You can't even wrap your arm around the thumb of this thing.
Wow. Okay. See, I haven't really been able to scale it in my mind until just now.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good bit.
Yeah, I feel that.
In 653, I've not put AD or BC, so apparently we're taking a gamble. Sorry, folks. Rhodes was captured by an Arabian force under the leadership of a Muslim caliph, Muawiyah I, according to Theophanes the Confessor, who was a Byzantine aristocrat who became a monk and chronicler. The statue was melted down and sold to a Jewish merchant of Edessa, who loaded the bronze on 900 camels.
That's a lot of camels.
The same story is... Yeah, that is a lot of camels.
Yeah.
The same story is actually recorded by Bar Hebraeus, who was a chief bishop of Persia of the Syriac Orthodox Church, noted for his work on philosophy, poetry, language, history, and theology. And from his writing, here's a little quote. "And a great number of men hauled on strong ropes which were tied round the brass colossus, which was in the city, and pulled it down. And they weighed from it 3,000 loads of Corinthian brass, and they sold it to a certain Jew from Emesa."
So I suppose that's corroborated, that story.
It corroborates it-ish, is the way I interpreted it.
Okay.
So it's got some stuff in there that we probably don't think is right, but that's two people saying it was sold and carted off. So I suppose that's pretty good correlation, I guess.
I just want to quickly say they melted down the brass and they put it on 900 camels. So I assume what you meant was they melted down into many small blocks and then give each camel a block. That is the 900th of the entire weight. I kind of just thought of like 100 camels by 100 camels, or rather 90 by 90 camels in a square, equidistant, and then they just had a huge cube of brass and they just put it down on top of 900 camels and they all walked at the same time, carried...
See, that's really not what I was thinking at all.
So...
Yeah.
I was thinking they melted it down into manageable amounts and each camel carried a little bit.
Okay, so they didn't melt down the statue and then reforge it into a camel 900 times.
I hate you both.
So they took it away on camels. So what, did they just pour the molten brass onto the camels? Or, they store water?
I'm pretty sure they turned it into like those bricks of like, gold you see in movies or something along that line.
Okay, and the camels ate the bricks. What? I'm just so confused.
So I've got an extra bit for this wonder, just glazing over that.
Okay.
Where? And I don't normally give a where because we're normally fairly certain or fairly uncertain. As I said earlier, the location is not 100% known. So the floor of the Fortress of St. Nicholas near the harbour contains sandstone blocks of unknown origin and purpose. They were too intricately cut to have actually been quarried for the structure, so it's argued that maybe these are remnants of the Wonders marble base, like it was repurposed locally.
Yeah.
Archaeologist Ursula Vedder makes a very interesting suggestion that the Colossus was actually not in the harbour at all. Instead, being in the Acropolis of Rhodes, which overlooked the port from a hill.
Oh.
Vedder believes that the structure could have been like a Helios sanctuary, some of its foundation actually becoming a supporting platform for the Colossus.
Yeah, maybe if you were just sailing past and you saw like the head of the Colossus as you were going past the port, you might think, oh look, there's the Colossus. And when you tell your friends about it, you go, yeah, in the harbour they've got this big bronze statue.
Yeah.
Well, now for my extra segment, the misconceptions.
Okay.
So this is my big additional this week. So as I said before, I've got family there. I've been a few times to where they say it stood, and a lot of the sort of, I guess, the preconceived notion of what it would have looked like, is that the statue would have stood with its legs apart, one arm bearing a torch above its head, similar description to what I mentioned earlier. And as I said, where it was rumoured to have stood, there's these pillars with bronze toppers. So this was actually mainly a figment of people's imagination, based on old texts mentions of the wonders, and this misconception effectively just disseminated throughout history. But we now know that it just simply couldn't have done that. If it had straddled the harbour, they would have had to close the harbour during construction, and the ancient Rhodians didn't have the means to dredge the location. They also didn't have the means to move the ruins once it fell. So it can't really have fallen in somewhere that, in an industrial area that people needed to use.
Yeah.
So it's really unlikely. Also, modern engineering indicates that had it straddled the harbour, one leg either side, being made of bronze, it would have actually just collapsed under its own weight.
See, I appreciate that. A scientific look.
The last misconception I'll mention is that many depictions the statue holds a torch, but there's no evidence of this, save for the record staging that the Rhodians kindled the torch of freedom, which is what I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So effectively, what seems to have happened, or the way I read it at the very least, was that some ancient people, reported on it, said it looked like one thing, and then this just got spread out and spread out and spread out until everyone's mental picture was effectively the same, but it was just wrong.
The Mandela effect.
Yeah. Especially with it, being melted down and being so old. So, that's a shame, but I thought it was really interesting, and I felt like I learned a lot, because having, as I previously said, having family from there and having chatted to them about it quite a lot previously, and hearing some of the, I guess, the stories people tell about it, and where it stood, and what it was, and what it stood for, and things like that. It was really interesting to actually get the, I suppose, the firm history, the factual evidence of things.
Yeah. Oh, it's cool.
Yeah. So how long did it stand for again? Like, was it a very, very short time?
I think it would... All the wonders were up for a period of 60 years. I don't know how long the Colossus itself stood for, but we could probably say it was for at least 60 years.
Yeah, so to be honest, that's not like a really long time. So the fact that it was up and then it was down again, people probably didn't know it had gone by the time it had gone. So it had gone up, loads of people had seen it, they'd talk about it, and then when it disappeared or fell over or was stolen by camels, there's probably this preconceived idea of what it was around the world, and when they found out it was gone, they just went with it. Who's going to prove them wrong?
Yeah, like you can't go, well, let's go and prove it. You go there and it's not there.
So you go, it's got big torch, it's holding a big torch, and it's got deer for feet, and it's straddling the harbour right now.
Got to straddle in the harbour. So my headcanon on the situation was basically, it didn't get knocked down by an earthquake, it was struck by a bolt of lightning, because Zeus was like, taking you out, Sonny. Like, nobody's a bigger statue than me.
Love it. Alright, let's move along to our next segment. Stuff that we like.
Oh.
This is where we talk about something we enjoyed between recordings. And I'm just going to jump in first because I'm greedy. This week, I thought I'd talk about a new show me and Oscar have been watching called Raised by Wolves.
Ooh, that rings a bell.
It's a very unique show, and the first 2 episodes were directed by Ridley Scott, who stays on as an executive producer, which is why it features plenty of milk-filled androids. So, the plot? Well, Earth's donezo, gone. It's just, it no good no more. We messed it right up. All that's left are the atheists and the Mithraics. So you've got people who don't believe in God and people who believe in the sun god, and they're both militant orders, I guess. Is the easiest way to put it. The atheists sent a ship to the habitable planet of Kepler 22b, where no humans aboard, just 2 androids and several fetuses tasked with setting up a human colony.
I do like that it's a Kepler planet.
The Mithraics had a similar plan, but they wanted to send an ark with lots of people in stasis, which took 10 plus years longer than the Atheists. All the Mithraics were effectively in like a VR sort of environment for this 10 years as well. So the ark rocks up, and the premise of the show follows the androids primarily attempting to raise human kids and establish new civilization and deal with the fact that more humans have rocked up. It's gone to some real unexpected places and has a hell of a lot of intrigue. Like I'm just like, I sit there and I'm like, what's going to happen next? I have no clue, and I kind of like it. I just want more. It's very, very Moorish.
So we've spoken about a similar idea before, haven't we? Where it's like, what if you get there and then other people get there at a different time because they set off at a different time or a different technology? And how do you integrate when it's two different people who've, one of you's been on a ship and one of you's been living on a harsh planet?
Well, I very much highly recommend it.
Ooh, it sounds good just from your description.
All right then, who's next?
Well, I was just quickly gonna say, what was I gonna say? I had come up with an idea just now, but it's completely left me. It must have been a lie. Maybe I'll go last. Maybe it was just fate that I was supposed to go third.
Okay. Well, I looking around my room to see what I love so much. You know what? It's getting cold at the moment. For once, I've complained about the heat for a long time. Over, this summer we've all been stuck inside.
To be fair, Oscar, I lived with you for a year prior to this, and I don't think I ever heard you mention about the heat then. So.
Oh, but I thought about it. I thought in my brain, gosh darn this heat.
Thought in my brain.
But now it's getting cold, which has its upsides and downsides. But one of the best upsides is I can put on my big comfy jumpers and I can wear my dressing gown. And you know what? Socks just feel better in the winter. Like in the summer, socks can just feel excessive. Right now, they are the perfect foot keeping temperature device.
Yeah.
So I'd like to give a shout out to just comfy clothes everywhere.
Estad.
Big shout out to the dressing gown fam. Like, I didn't realise how much I missed you, because, to be honest, if I would put on that dressing gown during summer, I hated it.
My jumpers are a huge part of my aesthetic, so not being able to wear them has been real crappy for, like, feeling good in the way I look, so I'm definitely standing this one.
Yeah, I've got some outfits that can start busting back out that were just off the table. But for me, the best thing is that I can sleep now. Oh my goodness, I can sleep.
Oh god, yeah. Yeah, that's a big one.
Okay, I actually remembered what I was going to talk about. And it was basically a delicious anime that I am enjoying recently is My Hero Macadamia. I don't know. Have I spoken about this in the I like thing section before?
I don't know, but you can talk about it again because I love My Hero so much, and I'm so glad you're watching it.
Obviously, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's watching. I would recommend it if you like anime. This is one of the better animes that I've seen so far, and I've not even caught up fully yet. So there's 4 seasons thus far. There's 5 seasons. So it's about a world where all of a sudden people started manifesting, superpowers. So it's your regular superpower, superhero show. And the superheroes, it's like a career path. So they go to schools where they can learn about being a hero and controlling their power and developing it and stuff like that. And, it just follows the escapades of the kids in the school. All Might, he's basically the Superman of the universe. And, there's like evil baddies who have superpowers and stuff like that. And it's really well made. It's not too slow in terms of like actually getting through the content. I know, well, if you like stuff like, say Dragon Ball Z, you want to see people, big dudes just duking it out like with huge earth-shattering punches. It's got that. It's got, interesting applications of the weirder abilities and stuff like that. And it's just a good time to watch. I would definitely recommend it. It's been a great time so far.
All right.
Nice. It slaps.
It does.
Does slap.
It's a banger.
It is a banger. And with that, I think that's us for the week.
Yeah.
We'll be back in 2 weeks' time, and any suggestions for feedback, do drop us a comment or email us on phenomenautspodcast@gmail.com. We can even give you a shout out if you'd like. Peace out, folks, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye!
Bye-bye.
Bye.